Good morning, I'm Yancy and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making a bit of a hybrid. We're going to make focaccia, but with my classic buttermilk biscuit dough recipe. Now why would we do that? Focaccia traditionally is a yeast spread, and goodness knows nothing smells better than a yeast spread cooking, and I love making yeast spread. But as you know, when you make yeast spread, you have to proof the yeast. It has to rise, not once, generally twice, and it's an all-day affair. And sometimes you're hungry and you just want focaccia for dinner. So let's get started. You can refer back to my basic biscuit recipe if you need to, but I'm gonna start here. I've already got my 2 cups of self-rising flour in the bowl. And I've also already incorporated my 1 stick of butter. And I just want to remind you the trick that I showed you last time, which was to use your cheese grater to grate your butter. Remember that? You just take a stick and you go like this and you grate it. And until you're done, you get rid of that. And that is so much easier than using this thing, which is in my drawer anyway. It's always just like misshapen and a mess. So I don't even use that anymore. So in here, I've got 2 cups of self-rising flour and 1 stick of butter that I have grated with my cheese grater. Now, I'm making a well in the center of my flour, and I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. Very untraditional when it comes to focaccia, but it's going to be, let's call this focaccia with a southern twist, okay? It's gonna have that tang that I love so much that buttermilk provides. So that is 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. And remember how I did this before? I like to kind of scrape the flour into the buttermilk and get that all nicely incorporated. My cat is playing with a piece of aluminum foil on the floor behind me. If you hear this funny scrapey sound, she's having a blast. She thinks she's my sous chef. She's always in the kitchen with me, which I love. Okay, so let's get rid of this for now. And I'm going to put a little bit of flour on my board here for the kneading process. Move some things out of the way here. Put my dough. Again, this is 2 cups self-rising flour, 1 whole stick of butter shredded with the cheese grater, and 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. Okay. So now we're going to knead it. And if you recall, when we did the biscuits, I told you that I like to knead my biscuit dough by folding it in on itself and kneading it that way. I don't do that with this because I don't really want the layers, which is what that kind of kneading gives you. I really want this to be I want to have not so much a biscuit texture, but more of a bread texture. So I'm going to knead it a little more aggressively. And this is a heavy dough, as you can see. So, but it's nice and dry. It feels good. This is a good dough here. Good dough. Okay, so this time I'm going to take my rolling pin because focaccia is a thin, flat bread. Well, I say thin, it's not terribly thin. It's not cracker thin, of course, but it's also not thick and fluffy like a biscuit is. So I'm going to use my handy dandy rolling pin. Now, focaccia can be flavored a gazillion different ways. You can add all kinds of things to it, as you may know. But I'm going to make a plain one today, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Well, it's not exactly plain. It's going to have a little bit of seasoning. Okay, now this scraper is your friend because I want this to be shaped in a rectangle. take my scraper around here and shape this into a rectangle. And over here I have my slightly or lightly greased sheet pan. So I'm gonna put my dough down there, reshape it a little bit. Now, as you know, focaccia, one of the other hallmarks of focaccia is that it has those wonderful indentions in it, and they're just filled with yummy olive oil. You can make those indentions with the a wooden spoon handle. I like to get down and dirty and use my fingers, so I'm going to do that. And then to make it even more fun and a bit easier, this is some delicious olive oil. And you use far more than you think you will need. Just really get in there. It needs to be just dripping in olive oil. And you're going to kind of massage it in, and you want all these little indentions to be full of wonderful, delicious olive oil. Oh, I wish you could smell this. Oh, it's so wonderful. Okay, so I've made all these wonderful indentions with my fingers. Can you see that? Wonderful. And now I am going to season it a little bit. I like salt and rosemary. And even though I do have fresh rosemary growing in my herb garden right now, for focaccia, I actually prefer dried rosemary. So that's what I've got here. If you've got fresh rosemary, go right ahead, or any other herb that you like to use. You really can't go wrong. Or if you want to just use salt, do that as well. So we're gonna sprinkle that on here. Do you ever wonder why cooks like to sprinkle salt from on high? It's not just showing off. It's because it actually disperses the salt so much more nicely, so much better, so much more evenly. It's more like snow. Otherwise, you can get clumps of salt, a clump of salt here and a clump of salt there. So this is nicely dispersed. And now we're ready to cook it. Didn't have to rise, didn't have to proof the yeast. I'm going to put it in a 400-degree oven. And it's probably going to cook for about 15 minutes, but I'll tell you, when we get back together, I will tell you exactly how long it needed to cook. So I'll see you in a few. Okay, we're back. It cooked for 14 minutes. It's a little bit, move over here, it puffed up a little bit more than I would have wanted it to, and I've made it in the past when it didn't puff up quite this much. I think perhaps I wasn't quite aggressive enough with making the holes. So remember when I said you can make the indentions with the end of a wooden spoon? I'm just going to go ahead and recommend that you do that. But I cut into it, and look at this texture. It's definitely more bready than biscuity. It doesn't have all the loft that the biscuits have. It's focaccia, y'all. That's what it is. It's a southern buttermilk biscuit focaccia. Oh, and it smells so good. So what am I going to do with my focaccia? Well, as much as I want to just gobble it down right now, what I have in mind is it's August, which on the East Coast is just another word for hot and humid. So this week we're going to have a lot of salads and sandwiches for dinner on focaccia. I've also used this as a base for pizza in the past. It's absolutely delicious. So I hope you try my recipe, and if you do, I'd like to know what you think. So thank you so much for stopping by. Bye. Okay, we're back. It cooked for 14 minutes. It's a little bit, move over here, it puffed up a little bit more than I would have wanted it to, and I've made it in the past when it didn't puff up quite this much. I think perhaps I wasn't quite aggressive enough with making the holes. So remember when I said you can make the indentions with the end of a wooden spoon? I'm just going to go ahead and recommend that you do that. But I cut into it, and look at this texture. It's definitely more bready than biscuity. It doesn't have all the loft that the biscuits have. It's focaccia, y'all. That's what it is. It's a southern buttermilk biscuit focaccia. Oh, and it smells so good. So what am I going to do with my focaccia? Well, as much as I want to just gobble it down right now, what I have in mind is it's August, which on the East Coast is just another word for hot and humid. So this week we're going to have a lot of salads and sandwiches for dinner on focaccia. I've also used this as a base for pizza in the past. It's absolutely delicious. So I hope you try my recipe, and if you do, I'd like to know what you think. So thank you so much for stopping by. Bye.